I'm Jennifer Waugh with episode 4 of our News for Jax crime series, Florida Justice Betraying the Badge. Federal investigators now have another suspect in their investigation into bank customer Sammy Safar's kidnapping and murder. It's another police officer, Carl Walden. They think he and Officer Eric Sinclair worked together to rob the convenience store owner. But the murder was 2 years earlier and they had no physical evidence to link anyone to his death. Their only real hope to learn the truth was to find someone who could help them connect the dots between Safar and Carl Walden. When Officer Carl Walden was called to testify before a grand jury in February 2000, the federal prosecutor thought he might be able to provide damaging information about Officer Eric Sinclair, who they knew was corrupt. No one expected during his time on the witness stand that he would implicate himself in Sammy Safar's murder when he slipped up by identifying the 33-year-old and his SUV a day after Walden testified that he had no idea who they were when he was shown their pictures. That mistake had led to an intense exchange after the hearing between the prosecutor and the officer.
When I told him, I said, "Carl, you murdered Sammy Safar." He said, "Prove it." And I said, "Well, that's just what we're going to do. We're going to prove it." And I said, "Every time someone knocks at your door, just remember it might be us coming for you."
Were you mad?
Well, I wasn't really mad, but it was blatantly lying. It was a heated conversation. I was definitely fired up because it was a big break in the case.
Do you think he was worried?
Well, he didn't act worried. I'm thinking he was, because Walden called Sinclair and told Sinclair, you know, I screwed up. I identified the man.
U.S. Attorney Jim Clinton, DEA Supervisor Sheila Smith, and Jacksonville Sheriff's Office detectives Richard True and John Zipperer now suspect Officer Eric Sinclair was the mastermind behind the July 3rd plot to rob Sammy Safar of his weekly $50,000 withdrawal from the bank where Sinclair worked security, but that Carl Walden was the one who carried it out. So the team did a deep dive into Walden's life, tracing his career working in narcotics, his time as a member of the SWAT team, and as a member of the juvenile intervention team with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. They also looked at his friends, zeroing in on one in particular, another officer named Reggie Bones. Walden was the best man at his wedding.
You're trying to uncover as many leads as possible, so you want to talk to somebody's best friend who, you think might be involved in the type of things we thought that Walden was involved in. That's how we ended up talking to Reggie Bones. He said that he didn't know anything, but we had a gut feeling he was lying, so we didn't just let him off the hook. We stayed in touch with him. And then eventually I think he was just tired of our company, so to speak.
That's when Officer Reggie Bones gave the team of investigators a name.
But he said, if you really want to know about Carl Walden and what he did, then you need to find Kenny McLaughlin.
That name would break the case wide open. Richard, how did you find Ken McLaughlin?
Pretty easy. He was in jail. So we went and got him.
Kenneth McLaughlin was being held on a drug charge in the Duval County Jail at that time in 2000. His name was familiar to investigators. His brother is a bishop and well known in Jacksonville as the founder of the Potter's House International Ministries and Potter's House Christian Academy. Ironically, faith had brought McLaughlin and Officer Carl Walden together. Now, for the first time in 25 years, he is sharing stunning details with us about what he told federal investigators that became the catalyst to an investigation into police corruption within the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
I met Carl in 1998 at church.
At that time, Ken McLaughlin was struggling with drug addiction after a football injury ended his college career at the University of Florida. He was lost, and his brother had hoped Officer Carl Walden would be the mentor he needed to get his life back on track.
We began to talk and started kicking it, playing basketball, and we became friends.
How would you describe Carl Walden then?
A humble, nice, God-fearing man at the time.
But it all fell apart when McLaughlin learned Officer Walden was not the man he thought, revealing a string of brazen crimes he helped Walden commit in broad daylight using his patrol car. It was June 19th, 1998.
He told me we were going to stop at somebody's house, pick something up. So we did. We stopped there. And what happened during that pit stop was shocking. He asked me to put on this vest and ski mask and said, I need you to go in with me.
They were parked outside a house in Arlington.
He told me doing a knock and talk. He got a menu out the back of the car, like a warrant. It was a menu. And he went to the front door and I went with him. We pulled our masks down. He told the person when they came to the door, he's here to pick up the husband. There's a search warrant for the husband.
McLaughlin says Walden came up with a lie about serving a warrant so he could steal from a man who kept drugs and money in a safe in the closet of the home. But when they knocked on the door, a woman answered, so they forced their way inside.
It became real then. The lady was hysterical. She was really shocked. She wanted some answers. She wanted to call somebody, and he refused to let her call somebody. He told me to go in the room, look in the closet, and see the safe and the money and the drugs. And at that time, he had the lady by the arms, and he fist cuffed her.
Arnitha Culp was home alone and kept asking the officers why they were wearing masks and why she had been handcuffed.
Very angry, upset. He was trying to make her tell him where the package was.
And how did he know that there would be drugs or money in the home?
Somebody had told him that.
McLaughlin said another police officer had tipped Walden off, but after searching everywhere, they found nothing.
He comes back in the middle of the room, grab her, tell me to get ready to go, grab Miss Culp, and threw her on the bed while she was handcuffed, and pepper sprayed her before he threw her in the bed. So she was real upset. She was hollering and screaming.
This is in the middle of the day in Arlington, and he's essentially just forced his way into someone's house.
Yes, ma'am.
A police officer.
Yes, ma'am.
What did you think as you were leaving?
This can't be who I think it is, doing these things on the color of the badge, because I was almost like I was forced to do something that I wasn't asked to do. You just assume that I'm going to do everything with you or for you what you tell me to do, regardless of being right or wrong. I was scared. Because we came out the door, it was a neighbor sitting in their yard.
He says he and Walden got into his patrol car and drove away.
And that was only just the beginning. Carl got a phone call. One of his CIs, that there was a person the guy had contact with, had a large sum of money. He was going to the bank to cash a check. And he showed him the check. It's supposed to be about $5,000. So we speeded and went across town.
Just hours after forcing his way into this woman's house, Walden was now racing in his patrol car to steal money from someone else. This time, a man driving a green and white van.
And we spotted him, and we got behind him. We pulled him over. And I got out. He told me to go out and help Jason. Jason was there too.
Who is Jason?
Jason Pugh is an old friend of mine from high school, and we went to Florida together. He was a smart kid, good athlete.
Jason Pugh was now a Jacksonville police officer. Carl Walden had called him for help. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when they pulled over the van in the parking lot of an Arlington apartment community. Pugh ordered Bernard Stewart out of the driver's seat, used flex cuffs to restrain him, and then pepper sprayed him, putting him in the van, demanding McLaughlin drive them to a remote area.
What was he saying to you?
He was very scared.
Did you have any idea that Jason Pugh was doing these kinds of things
No.
at all?
No.
You thought he was, an upstanding police officer?
Absolutely.
What happened next?
Yeah, Jason comes back to the door and tell me to open the box. Check that box. I opened the box up, wasn't nothing in there. So he said, let's go. So I jump out the police car, jump out the truck and run back to the police car.
Carl Walden had followed in his police car.
I was in shock. And apparently Jason went to his pockets and found some money. And he split it up,
Do you remember how much money you got?
about $600-something.
And you personally, all that money?
200. It was split up 3 ways.
You have 2 police officers who are pulling over a citizen in the middle of the day and pepper spraying him and robbing him.
Yes.
Bernard Stewart and Arnitha Culp both called 911 to report what happened to them. Walden was listening on his police radio.
And we heard them looking possibly 2 police officers. So they talked with her and gave her a description of us. One 6'4", the other one 5'9". It was describing us. That the description was so clear. And I wore glasses back then, so I had glasses on, so you could see the glass frame and the size in the mask.
And what did Carl tell you about being worried about the description?
It's okay, they ain't got nothing.
Carl Walden and Jason Pugh were never interviewed or investigated.
How did they get away with it?
The police.
Now, 2 years later, Ken McLaughlin is describing to federal investigators in detail a home invasion and carjacking involving not just one, but now 2 corrupt officers.
Did you believe it?
Well, it was hard not to believe stuff at this point.
That home invasion of Arnitha Culp's residence and the carjacking of Bernard Stewart, those were news headliners, in Jacksonville, because there was this fear that someone was imitating or pretending to be the police and breaking into doing a home invasion, doing a carjacking. So it was all over the news. We all knew about those things. I think Sheriff Glover, when these things happened in June of 1998, he was in front of the camera saying, "I've accounted for every police car." He mentioned something about a satellite that could see see cars or something. He was assuring the public that it wasn't the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. So when Kenneth McLaughlin described those, it fit to a T, because he described them like he had been there, because he had been.
Was he forthcoming with the information? Was he hesitant at all?
The whole plan from the beginning was, just let's see if he'll talk, and if he'll talk, let's just let him talk.
We didn't push Kenny. He was in jail. He wasn't going anywhere. He was safe. We weren't going to rush this thing.
And we thought that was enough for the day.
So Jim and Blitz got up and they were sitting on one side of the table, and I was sitting next to Kenny. And just about the time they got out the door, for some reason I was behind them, and I go to slide my chair out, and Kenny's broke. He's scared. He don't know what to do, and he said, "There's more." And I said, "What you talking about, Kenny?" And he said, "Carl killed that man." And I said, What guy?" He said, "At the bank." And I said, "Hold on a minute. Just take a breath, hold on a minute, because you need to tell all of us." And I walked out there and I got Jim and Blitz, and
What'd you tell them?
he's got more to say. And we walk back in, and he lays everything out.
He described exactly what happened.
During our next episode, Carl Walden's next crime,
He told me everything would be simple. My part and his brother-in-law part would be very simple. So leave it to him.
spirals out of control. When a traffic stop
But I told him Sammy was dead. I'm not a medical expert, but he wasn't breathing.
escalated into murder.
He told me to get in the back seat. He told me I'm in charge of dumping the body.
Florida justice betraying the badge continues.